Of Judah. Now, while we see God's special nation being led off into captivity, we are offered words of hope found in Lamentations 3, verses 25 through 26, where it says, "The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." This week, Randy Frazee began his commentary by relating a story. He said that on the evening of April 14th, the radio operators of the RMS Titanic received a message that they were heading towards a dangerous ice field. Well, unfortunately, those operators were very busy sending messages from the Titanic's passengers back to the people at home, letting everyone know what a great time they were having on this world's most luxurious ship. The operators set aside those warnings so that they could get through this long list of messages from their passengers. Later that evening, a radio operator from a nearby ship sent a message warning the Titanic of the ice field again. One of the Titanic's radio operators responded via Morse code, shut up, I am busy." And I think we know the rest of that story. What is it that makes us tend to ignore warnings until it is too late? Apparently, this is an age-old problem. No matter how many messengers that God has sent to his special nation, they repeatedly ignored him. Looking at God's upper story, we find it is pointing towards that coming Messiah, God's special gift to this world, who will change how God relates to his people. The story began back in the garden with that perfect community. God did this so he could be with us. Adam and Eve, they chose to disobey the one rule that they were given. And ever since then, we have watched God patiently trying to call us back to him. So far in the story, we have met some amazing people who trusted God. Abraham, Sarah, Joseph, Moses, Ruth, and David. We have also met some not so great people. Ones like Pharaoh, Jezebel, and Manasseh. Throughout this lower story of ours, these people's actions seem disconnected. But God is using them, the good and the bad, to bring together his upper story of calling us back to him. Now, last week we heard about the king Manasseh. He was captured and he was led off to Babylon. This was the beginning of the end for the remnant of Judah. All that is left is Jerusalem. And the line of evil kings continued, even as Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, captures another portion of the Israelites and deports them off to Babylon. God continues to try and warn his people what would happen if they don't turn around. The prophet Ezekiel, he was off in exile already in Babylon, and he uttered these words to the people. He said, "I'm about to bring a sword against you, and I will destroy your high places. Your altars will be demolished, and your incense altars will be smashed, and I'll slay your people in front of your idols." You would think that a message like that would get through to the people, but they continued to ignore God. and time was running out. Now, despite the people's total rejection of God, he gives these people that he loves one final warning. Most of Judah is now captives in Babylon, and Jerusalem was about to be attacked. So God calls forth another prophet, Jeremiah. This was probably the worst time in history to be a representative of God. This once proud city of Jerusalem is now in chaos. The wealthy, the artisans, the merchants, and all the military, they had been deported. And all that was left was the poorest of the poor. It's a time of anarchy, famine, and violence. They have turned their backs on God and are only living for themselves and for their pagan gods. So God sends Jeremiah to tell these people that they are a bunch of sinners. God's patience is running out. And if they don't turn back to him, he'll completely destroy Jerusalem. God also told Jeremiah, nobody's going to listen to you. Pretty good gig, huh? Jeremiah tries to get out of it by offering up some excuses. God, I'm not a good speaker. God said to him, I'll tell you what to say. Jeremiah goes on, God, I'm too young. I'm afraid. God said to him, don't worry, I'll be with you. God tells Jeremiah, go up and down the streets of Jerusalem. Look around, consider, search through their squares there. If you can find but one person who deals honestly and seeks the truth, I will forgive this city. It almost sounds as if God is lowering the bar. Just find me one honest person in the city, and I will forgive everything. We can go on with our relationship. If you believe the Old Testament painted God as a vengeful, full of wrath kind of God, remember this passage. Remember the tears that he will shed for his special nation as they are removed from the land that he gave them. This is the kind of God that wants to be with us and provide us a way to live with him forever. 2 Chronicles 36, verses 15 through 16 says, the Lord, the God of their ancestors, sent word to them through his messengers again and again, because he had pity on his people and on his dwelling place. But they mocked God's messengers. They despised his words, and they scoffed at his prophets, until the wrath of the Lord was aroused against his people, and there was no remedy. So King Nebuchadnezzar, he comes and he begins his final assault on Jerusalem. Judah's king Zedekiah asked Jeremiah to make one last plea to God. And Jeremiah delivers God's response. It's too late. Nebuchadnezzar's army breaks through the walls of Jerusalem. They capture Zedekiah and they set fire to the temple that Solomon had built. And soon the whole city is ablaze. Our lower story perspective might lead us to think that the destruction is harsh and unnecessary. If God loved these people so much, why did he do this? Well, this is precisely why God did it. Because he loved them so much. If God had continued to bless them while they acted so poorly and contrary to his commands, it would send a confusing and contradictory message of who God is and how his community works with God. Although Jerusalem fell, God continued to speak to his people through Ezekiel and Jeremiah. Jeremiah chose to stay in Jerusalem. There he was grieving over his loss. And even in his sorrow, he continues to call Judah back to God. God uses both of these prophets to repeat his message. I want to live with you and will make a way for you to come back to me. The point of God's judgment on Judah was to get their attention and to remind them of his promise that a king would come from their tribe. This banishment was temporary as God prepared them for a magnificent moment in history. Ezekiel 36, verses 24 through 26 and 28 says, "For I will take you out of the nations. I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back into your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all of your impurities and from all of your idols. I will give you a new heart, put a new spirit in you. I will remove from your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. Then you will live in the land that I gave your ancestors. You will be my people, and I will be your God." Can you imagine how those words fell on the hearts of the people that were scattered throughout Babylon? Better yet, can you imagine how many people today long to hear God's tender invitation to come home? It's amazing that God uses each and every one of us to reveal his heart and to remind people that he is always waiting for them, eager to forgive and offering restoration of their lives in ways that we can't even imagine, if they will let him. For many of us, it could be maybe that guy that we work with, or perhaps the woman that's pushing the shopping cart next to us. Perhaps it's a teenager that you think has an attitude problem. Random people, yet all are connected to you. These are the exiles who are longing to connect with God and find their way home. Many have ignored the warnings and they have hit the iceberg that sank them into the sea. They are longing for someone, anyone, maybe even you, to throw a life preserver out to them. They are frightened, they're confused, they're worn out, they're lonely, and yet they're all precious in God's sight. Could you be that soft, tender voice of God that they long